Okay. You get your name up there, I think. Because I signed in.
Mary, have we got most people in? Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Trudy Peterson. I coordinate Village Voices for Capitol Hill Village. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Before we get started for tonight, a couple of suggestions. First of all, we'd suggest you mute yourself during the presentation. And also, if you have a question or comment that you want to pose during our speaker's talk, we suggest you put it in the chat. Mary and I will be monitoring that. We'll make sure that we get to the comments and questions in the chat, but we'd like to keep the flow going if we possibly can. So that would be very helpful. Two other bits of information. First of all, next program, June 3, is Tommy Wells, and he's going to be talking about how we live and breathe in an urban environment. And he's going to really be talking about whether our city is as green as we want it to be. Last month, we had Barbara Fast-Charles talking about carousels in America. If you missed it, it was an absolutely enchanting talk in which we looked at pictures of carousels all over the country and the history of carousels in the United States and to some extent in Europe. It is on our YouTube channel, and you can go at your leisure and take a look at it. And I would advise you to do it. If you didn't see her, it was a wonderful evening. That brings me to Linda Young's presentation, and she also has agreed to allow us to tape this conversation and put it up on the YouTube channel. So that's a very great gift to all of us, and thank you very much, Dr. Young. Now, Dr. Linda Young is a Texan, she just revealed. She has a PhD in statistics. She's a fellow of the American Statistical Association. She's written books and articles published in different journals on statistics. And she is the Director of Research and Development in the Department of Agriculture's National Agricultural Statistics Service. But why we really wanted to bring her to us as part of Village Voices is because of articles like this. I'm going to hold it in front of me. It says, "Let AI remake the whole US government," was an opinion essay published on the 7th of March. And Linda has been working with a group throughout the government to start to develop the kind of webinars that will be needed to help introduce AI technology throughout the government. And because AI is so controversial with people with plus thinks this is great and people very worried about what AI will mean to all of us, seemed like just the right time to hear from somebody with Linda's expertise. So with that, Linda, floor is yours.
Thank you, Trudy. Group, that might have oversold it a bit. So let me kind of show you what I hope to do today. I'm going to be talking about, Trudy came up with this really nice title, "As AI Goes, Where Goes Its Use in Government Programs?" And I'm going to hit on that some, but I think what really has people excited right now is not government AI, but just what does this mean? And what is this Chat GPT all about? And so I'm going to do the first half, or maybe a little over a half, discussing a few things about AI in our personal life and in the federal government, And then I'm going to we're going to just do an interactive thing. So I want to acknowledge generative AI is the ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, Google's Gemini, and things like that. And I'm learning about this, and it's caught the attention of many. I've relied on several sources for this work in addition to my own efforts. There's this webinar series on AI and federal government, and this was a joint effort of the Federal Committee on Statistical Methodology, or FCSM, and the National Institute of Statistical Sciences, or NIST. There were 5 hour-and-a-half webinars, and they're posted on the NIST website. And then last week, we had AI Day, which was a joint effort of FCSM, NIST, and the Committee on National Statistics, or CNSTAT. This was held at the historical National Academies building on Constitution. And I couldn't find them yesterday, but today the talks, or at least a portion of the talks, are posted. And some of those you might find it of interest as well. I've also used open source information through Google sources as well as NAS documents. If later you want to know the source of some particular information, I'll be happy to share that. So I haven't tried to fill the whole slides with references. So I want to at least make sure everyone understands what NAS is all about. Then I'll talk about traditional AI in our lives as well as in government. And then what is this generative AI? Then again, generative AI, how it's beginning to permeate our lives, whether we realize it or not, its use in government, at least thus far, and then how to use these GPTs. So I have available Microsoft Copilot and ChatGPT, and I thought we'd just try some things with it and have a little fun. So USDA's National Agricultural Statistics Service, so you see with that long a name why we call it NAS, conducts more than 300 surveys and produces more than 450 reports each year. It provides information on all facets of U.S. agriculture. We have our big 5 are corn, soybeans, wheat, cotton, and oranges. And when we put out a report on any of those, if it's surprising, the results are, the forecasts are surprising, it tends to upset the commodity market. So it's heavily used by producers, by agribusinesses, Congress, researchers, and others. We also conduct the Census of Agriculture every 5 years. We released the 2022 Census of Ag in February of this year. And this is the most comprehensive source of information that covers all aspects of agriculture. And we produce it at various geospatial scales. So we have the county level, state, congressional districts, and so forth. And this serves as a foundation for farm policy. Now, my role in NAS is to ensure that our numbers that we put out, we publish, are the best in the nation, or the best period, because that allows everyone to get the information at the same time and presents a level playing field, because a lot of money sometimes follows some of our numbers, such as in the commodity markets that I mentioned earlier. And as long as we do that, NAS is relevant and of value to the nation. And if we're not successful, we lose our relevancy. So let's just back up a bit. AI has been here for a long time. It actually began in the early 60s when we had started having mainframes and could start computing things faster than by hand or with mechanical calculators. And just to look at Amazon as an example, it began as an online bookstore in 1994. And in 1998, it launched item-based collaborative filtering. And the whole purpose was so you could make personalized recommendations. Before that, You could search on keywords or, look through a lot of web pages. But in 1998, this new method was made available. So, and Amazon was the one who developed it. And so it's based on collaborative filtering, which is just a method for predicting a user's taste and finding the items that a user might prefer based on information collected from other users having similar taste and preferences. So I don't know about you, but whenever I surf the web, I often get ads popping up, and they're related to things I'm interested in. And if I click on them, and I get a lot more of those types. Prior to 1998, these collaborative filterings were user-based primarily, and there are some still today. And in that, you identify users who have made similar purchases, figure out what other things those users have purchased, and suggest items. And so this could be informed some by demographics and other factors, but item-based explored the relationships between items, not users. So if people purchased a book, well, I'm reading one now by Patricia Cromwell. If I order a book from Amazon on Patricia Cromwell, then I'll be suggested I'll get suggestions for other Patricia Cromwell books, but also books of similar in the genre. And if I keep buying it, it keeps me going down that path. But if I buy a different kind, I'll start getting different recommendations. And that was a major breakthrough because it was much more effective than the user-based. So today, AI permeates Amazon's processes. They use it to estimate delivery times. Every time I order something, I'm told when it'll arrive, suggest movies or telephone shows. I don't know about you, but I have Alexa voice assistant, and when I leave home, I miss it because I don't see well without help. And so I'll often ask Alexa, what time is it? Alexa turns on lights for me and does other things, makes recommendations for what to purchase. Amazon uses robots to help fill customer orders and keep track of inventory. So a person can pick up an item. It says in both hands, but as I learned, one hand will be enough. You slide it under the scanner and place it in the bin, and AI will keep track of which bin that item is in. Now, some of us, I think, have probably seen these grab and go in stores. I know they have one at DCA near Terminal A where you go in, pick up some things and walk out, and it's automatically on your credit card. You scan your credit card when you go in. And of course, Alexa voice assistant, I got carried away with that. I think it's because I use it too much. So what are other everyday uses of traditional AI? Many of us have facial recognition on our phones. We don't necessarily enter in our passcode. We just hold it up. It looks at our face and lets us access our phone. Weather forecasts use a lot of AI. They're so much more accurate than they were when I was a child. Traffic signals, we'll notice that lights are coordinated so that the flow of traffic is maximized. Google searches are built on AI. All the time I'm getting directions to a destination. It was actually hard when I moved to DC to find a paper map of the central part of DC. I finally did, but they're not as plentiful as they once were. Traveling by air, home security systems, the information's recorded. Now, when anyone rings a doorbell, I'm told someone's at the door. Zillow home price estimates are another one. And I think this gives you an idea. We could go on, but there's very few things we do in life that's not impacted by AI today. Now, I think of these as traditional AI for the most part. And at NAS, we use these for web scraping. So we go on the web and gather information for one purpose, is to identify farms that's not on our NAS list of all U.S. farms. Some countries have a registry that, most countries have a registry that farms have to, the producers have to sign up and say, yes, I have a farm. We in the U.S., farmers don't like that. So we have to try to figure out where all the U.S. farms are in the nation, and going on the web and using a few keywords to automatically identify sites with lists of farmers and pulling those down and organizing it is one use of AI. We also collect some data, not a lot, for use in reports. For example, we use when reporting prices, the cost of things in agriculture, we'll sometimes use that. We consistently predict the probability that a producer will respond to a survey. And we're refining it so we'll not only will respond, but to what mode. In other words, can we just mail them something, a survey? That's the cheapest for us. Will they respond to that? Do we have to call them? Will they go on the web? Actually, web is the very cheapest. So we'd like to do that. We're trying to get people going to the web, but if not that, will they go mail, call? And we still send people out to collect data in person, which is very expensive. So we'd like to predict the probability. And then if we get toward the end of a sampling period and our response rate is low, we're going to go after the producers that are more likely to respond because it's a better use of our data collection dollars. We forecast the yield of major crops: corn, soybeans, cotton, and wheat are 4 of them. We don't forecast oranges using AI. We assess the value of NAS publications by determining how often they are used in newspapers, magazines, journal articles, etc. Well, it seems like that would be pretty easy, right? The problem we have is that many newspapers, magazines, journal articles, they'll use our data, but they don't acknowledge the source of it. Or if they do, it's from another newspaper or magazine that use the data. And so what we'd like to do is get a true reading on the value and how often our information is used. So we've had a project focused on that. We've used it to identify the most common topics tweeted about NAS, to understand what's of interest to the producers, and to identify the comments that producers provide that may improve customer service. So we have interviewers go out and we have millions of comments. I mean, that's no exaggeration. Millions of comments that have been provided to us. Some of them are, I don't like to ever, complete your survey. I don't like you. You're intruding in my life. Those are not overly helpful for us. But sometimes people will say, I have a young child in my house. Do not call me after 7 p.m. You'll wake the child up. That really matters because we don't want to anger our customer base. And so those types of responses we really try to identify, but when you have so many, it's hard. And so we've had a project to try to rank those that are most important and can help us in this way. Now, I want to talk more specifically about a few projects, and I want to begin by describing some administrative data that we have. The Farm Service Agency is also within the USDA, and all producers participating in a USDA program for a particular crop season complete Form FSA 578. It has information for each field. They call it a common land unit. And I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Let me see if I can see it. But you'll see the outlines of here. That's one crop under one operation that's treated uniformly. So all these yellow lines are identifying fields, basically. Whoops. And for each of the fields, the producer reports what crop was planted, when it was planted, how many acres were planted, some farming practices such as irrigation. And it's a wealth of information. And because they're associated with government payments, they are very accurate. They're checked on the ground by FSA staff. And but it doesn't cover everything. The coverage is variable for crops and states, but high in major corn states. So we had a debate. It's at least 95% for corn in Illinois. Some think it's 97 or 99%, but most of the corn grown in Illinois is in FSA, whereas in Pennsylvania, there's less participation, primarily due to religious beliefs that one should not participate in government programs. Now, I told you about that because we use that valuable administrative data to create this cropland data layer. This has been produced by NAS for 16 years now. I've shown you a few crops. You'll see that corn is the corn belt right here. Yellow is corn, green is soybeans. You can see areas of cotton is in red. And we actually show brown is wheat. So you'll see some up here in the Palouse and in the plains here, up here, and some in Montana. And we actually plot where I think 113 crops are now during the course of a growing season. And what we do is we take satellite imagery, which gives us reflectance in color bands. And we also have the FSA data. And we take a portion of the FSA data to train a model to look at all the cornfields, and given that these are cornfields, what kind of light bands do we have? What are the intensities? And we develop a classification algorithm and then apply it across the nation. And that's the process we go through. This is a 30-meter product and has 9 billion pixels in it. We're getting ready to go to 10 meter, which would have 9 times or 81 billion pixels in that. And it's used in all kinds of ways. We can use it to get an estimate of how much land is planted to various crops. We also, if someone wants to forecast corn, you need to forecast it for the areas that have corn. So we create what's called a mask, where you only get the corn fields and block out everything else, and then bring in the environmental variables such as soil, type of soil, amount of rainfall, and so forth to do forecasts. So this is one of our major geospatial products that we produce within my division. Just recently, a couple of years ago, we released the crop sequence boundaries layers. And what happened is, because we only have FSA data for certain crops, and in certain areas, it doesn't offer complete coverage. At one time, FSA made the CLUs available to everyone. And that aggravated some producers because they said, you can tell I participated in the government program because there's a CLU on my land, but not on the land of my neighbor, and he didn't participate in a government program. So Congress in the Farm Bill said, FSA, you're not to make any of this, the CLU boundaries available. So what we did was take a series of 8 of these cropland data layers and stacked them on top of each other and identified the largest area that had a common crop throughout those 8 years and what the pattern of the crop was, and use that to identify individual fields across the nation. So it did not depend upon whether it was in a CLU or not. So there's no designation here, and it's based totally on public data. We added census roads and rail features so that it's easier to identify where things are. And so we've produced these. It takes 8 years to produce one layer. So you see here on the right, 2013 to 2020, cropland layers were used to create this one map. And this has become really popular. It's a joint effort with the Economic Research Service. So if you look here, what we've done is use the CSBs and the FSA CLUs, and we've overlaid them and identified where we have FSA data, which is blue, and where we don't, which is red. And you'll see in Illinois, you have to look hard to see red. You see a few red here. Now these gray spots, that's where there's no cropland. And often there's cities here. You can see there's a river going through here, so there's no crop right there. Now, in contrast, Pennsylvania is less densely covered with cropland, and you'll see there's quite a bit of red in Pennsylvania, showing that there's less coverage. And we have used this to try to identify farms that we have missed on our list frame. So we identify the areas not covered by FSA. We see whether or not we identify the owners of that land. We see whether or not they're on the list frame already. And if not, we send them a form to assess whether or not they're a farm. Now, it only takes $1,000 of production in a year, or the potential to have $1,000 to be a farm. So it doesn't take a lot of farming to be a farm in the US. And then we've created these predictive cropland data layers. And instead of stacking them up, what we've done is look at them over time, as well as FSA data, and then tried to predict what will be planted where in the coming year. And you'll see again, here we have predictions for Illinois, but some we're more sure of than other, and that's what these entropy layers about. The greener it is, the more confident we are that we got that prediction right. And the darker red, as it gets to red, we're not at all sure about that. But our accuracy is up over 80% for both corn and soybeans. Now, I want to give you another background piece of information. Each year we conduct the June Area Survey, and we call it the JAS. And we take and map across the US, and we group the land according to how much cultivation there is. So if we have over 50% cultivation, it's in one group, 15 to 50, it's in another group, and so forth. And then we identify areas of about a square mile to as a primary sampling unit. And here we have one shown in this, and it's in red. Now you'll notice it's not like a section in the plains where it's a mile by mile. Because we want to rely on roads and fences and other landmarks so that when an interviewer goes out, it's easy for them to tell where they ought to be. It's not real easy. I've done this, but it's easier if you know there's a road along this border. And then we identify every type of operation within this, and those are the people we visit and collect data for. And we collect information on these tracts, what we call tracts, as well as the whole farm. The problem is not everybody wants to talk to us. So we have some non-response. And for the area, the tract, not for the whole farm, we require that there not be any, that everything is completed. If we don't get someone to respond, we impute the value. This takes a lot of time by the staff. And so we've developed what's called the June area tool. We have past CDLs, the cropland data layers, historical FSA data. Now we have a prediction for CDL starting in 2021, as well as how much confidence we have in it, which we started doing last year. And what's been occurring is that field staff sit down and look at all that information and then decide what to put in. And you can imagine that there is a lot of variation from person to person as far as the quality goes. So what we've been wondering is whether we can make that decision for them in an automatic way that saves time and improves quality. So we checked that. We have two models to predict. We have the predictive CDL, but we also have modeled what we think will be planted based on historical crop rotations using the CSB. And we found out if these two models agree and both say they're corn, it's usually corn. It's quite accurate. So as a first step, we're going to put in the information for those tracts in which we have agreement. And then otherwise, NASDAQ will still have to be filling it out by hand. What we found out so far is that we get more precision for the tracts that we automate than if we had allowed an individual to do the work. So it saves time and we have better data quality at the same time. So I've just been talking about traditional AI use, which has gotten better over time, started in the 60s, gotten better as we've had more intensive computing power. They're based on what we call machine learning and text-based analyses. It's trained to recognize patterns in existing data, can be used to obtain estimates or forecast. We can use it to make decisions as long as we tell the program what the predefined rules are. And the focus is primarily on automation. Now, that's what's been going on for over 50 years. But now there's this new thing, generative AI, that people are talking about all the time. And ChatGPT did this and that. And here the focus is on amalgamation. It's trained on massive amounts of data. Models are trained on massive amounts of data. Learning patterns are studied and used to generate content. There's creation of new data, creative capabilities, and there are also applications in art and design. So let's look at what's happening here. These are called generative pre-trained transformers, GPTs. They're been developed and refined over several decades. Now, they were envisioned really early. Do you remember how the heuristically programmed algorithmic computer that appeared in the 1968 film 2001, A Space Odyssey? You know, Hal said, No 9,000 computer has ever made a mistake or distorted information. We are all, by any practical definition of the words, foolproof and incapable of error. Well, that wasn't quite right, but it was a vision that people are still striving to achieve today. A big leap forward happened when the generative adversarial networks, or GANs, were introduced in 2014. They are designed to generate synthetic data that are indistinguishable from real data. Now, the thought of that can be a little scary, but it can be harnessed for good, and we'll talk about both sides of that in just a bit. There are numerous applications in art, design, natural language processing, and other things. So what about these GPTs? Every morning for 475 days now, I have done Duolingo first thing in the morning. I've only committed to 10 minutes a day, and I usually get my lesson done in less than that. Now, Duolingo introduced the AI model BirdBrain in 2020, but it shifted to large language models, which are what the GPTs are based on. And it's a generative AI tool in 2023, which allows it to tailor the lessons more to the individual. In November 2022, OpenAI produced ChatGPT. February 2023, Microsoft Copilot came out. And December 6, 2023, Google Gemini was introduced. Now, I haven't tried Google Gemini, but I've tried the other two. I actually have a more enterprise version of ChatGPT, but all I've done is the free version of Microsoft Copilot. And I want to share what I've learned about those with you. So, what is GPT? Well, I asked ChatGPT, and this is what it told me. Okay. It's a type of artificial intelligence developed by OpenAI. But let's look at what the words mean. Generative mean it creates coherent and sensible output based on statistical probability of what comes next in a sequence of words. While plausible, it is not always right. It's not. So you can't take it and assume you have the truth. Pre-trained, it uses vast amount of content from various sources, books, articles, websites, code repositories, etc. And transformer, it has a machine learning model that processes words in relation to all other words in a sentence and how they relate to other words in sentences. Right? So let's think about it a bit. Suppose visiting Rome, you must see. And then GPT looks at what's the most probable next word. If it could be the, that's a common word, right? It could be the. So it doesn't always choose the one that's most likely. It could be Vatican, museum, Trevi. Now, if it's Trevi, you would think it would be fountain would be the word after that. But it looks about at a word a time. It sees the most probable. It adds in a little bit of randomization and it puts it down. And then it has, okay, I now have this sequence. What's the most probable word to come next? It's not, it will choose its phrases, but it's just looking at where you are, what's the next word or phrase to use, and then puts it in, and that's what's most probable. It's not like saying, what are the 10 things to do in Rome? Top 10 things to do in Rome. It's different from that. It just looks at the sequence, what's the most likely thing to come next, and it puts it down. So how could we use it? How can we use it? I'm eager to hear if some of you've already really integrated these. I haven't done all of these, but I've made some progress on most of them. They could be used to optimize your calendar and suggest meeting times. I really need that. In the budget cuts, I'm losing my administrative assistant, and I tend to double book, so I could really use that. It can draft or sort emails for us. Summarize articles, books, or papers, highlighting key points or generating questions to consider. I can see students really loving that. Take dictated notes, suggest improvements, generate summaries, or brainstorms ideas. So you can dictate the notes, have it transformed into words, and then feed it into ChatGPT and have it suggest to use it to make a write-up, do a summary, or give ideas on next steps. Provide ideas for improving golf, swimming, or in my case, pickleball. Personalize learning paths for professional or personal development. Elicit actionable ideas. Customer service chatbots. I think most of us have had the experience with customer service chatbots and learn to say representative, representative, representative. And often the chatbots don't listen, and it's extremely frustrating to get what I need out of the discussion. And it assists in drug discovery, medical imaging, and genomic analyses. So in the federal statistical agencies, we're all pretty new at the use of generative AI. OMB just recently released guidance, that's the Office of Management and Budget, saying we should move to adopt that, but USDA has a policy against using generative AI. So it's a process of getting this opened up and available. And the reason USDA hasn't endorsed it yet is the concern, and USDA tends to be, as farmers do, somewhat conservative in this approach. But it's really useful in development of code. You can describe a problem and specify the programming language, and it'll give you a set of code. Now, that code will probably not be exactly the final code, but often it's easier. It gives you ideas on how to approach the problem, and it may be easier to start with that and then make some adjustment and tailor-make it to your use. The one that I'm most interested in using in NAS is to convert O code to another programming language. SAS-AF is a language that has been discontinued and is no longer supported by NAS. We're moving more to R, so I'd like to be able just to put that code in ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini and say, convert the following code to R. And it will do that. Again, an individual will have to go in and check it, but boy, it will save us a lot of time if we can get a running start on that. There are people in business and industry pulling out old COBOL code. If some of you may have programmed in COBOL at one time and converting it to other languages now. I'd like to customize our survey questionnaires for producers. We have some very small producers who make less than $10,000, have less than $10,000 of sales in a year. And then we have large producers that will sell over $1 million of produce in a year. And the questionnaire is the same for everybody. And it would be nice to tailor it to each of the needs. And you have to be careful not to introduce bias in the process. And we could use it to provide easier access to data. Right now, we have a number of third parties, individuals, who go on the NAS website, pull down the data, and put it in a more useful form and earn their living that way. Our data is so challenging to access, and we're not alone in the federal statistical system. So I was talking last week or visiting last week with Fraka Kruder, who works at the University of Maryland, and she said that she's been working with the German government to use these large language models so people can write, say, I'd like to know about the number of female farmers in, say, Ohio and what they're growing. And the information is pulled out and made available in a readable form. That would be a lot better for most of our producers and and most of the people interested in our data. And I'd like to move in that direction. Chatbots, this chatbot is what's being used to do that, can be created, making this access easier. There are biases sometimes in generated content. An individual, and I'm going to look up the name right quick, pardon me, but basically, the concern was that on facial recognition, the initial product that was released could not distinguish sex for Black women. And this author, Joy Buolamwini, wrote a book on unmasking AI because she, as a Black woman, was frustrated by this bias that it's okay if you're a white female or white male, but you couldn't for Black females. And explored and found the biases that were existing in the models. Those biases can creep in so easily. And it's important to really evaluate all of these AI activities to be sure that we're not allowing that to happen. Data provenance. Who owns the data? And how do you know where it came from? Because often these generative AI, the chat GPTs and copilots are pulling data from all different sources, and there's not attribution given. How do you find that? Now, I've asked, and I've asked just yesterday, what's the source of this information? And sometimes you get some things that you can find and some things you don't. There's issues of intellectual property rights. Suppose you have some copyrighted material that's up on the web. These GPTs don't always recognize that. One that's a big concern, and this is really big for the federal government, is preserving the confidentiality of individual information. We make a big effort. We never, ever let out our survey data and the information contained in it at the individual level, period. But when you begin combining information from various sources, sometimes individual information becomes available. And our ability to take so much different types of data and put it together has really increased concerns for the confidentiality. And it's a major area of work in all the federal agencies who collect data, at least those who collect data. We need to have responsible use of AI-generated content. And all of you, I know, have heard about misinformation and fake content, the impact it could have on our elections. Then there are malicious uses where people's voices are, through AI, are used to say things that are not right. There are pictures that are fake. There's information that's fake, and it could really harm individuals greatly. People are worried they're going to lose our job. Every time I talk in NASA about some new application, the first concern was, well, that's what I'm doing. Does that mean I'm going to lose my job? And the general answer for us is no, but you'll be transitioning to something that has a higher value. But some people may lose their job in some areas. And then a lack of transparency. Often these things appear to be like black boxes. And when we produce statistics, official statistics, I have to be able to stand up and explain how we got them. And so it can't be a black box. We have to understand what's happening within the box and be able to tell others. So how to use generative AI. This is not a new and improved Google search. Patrick Winston said your success in life will be determined largely by your ability to speak, your ability to write, and the quality of your ideas. Kevin Tupper suggests that one should start about generating ideas, writing, and then speaking. So I see I'm running out of time. I went slower than anticipated, but I'm going to stop here, and if I'd like to at least show you a couple of things. So if Mary, you would take away the share, and I can reshare for just a moment. I'll go Copilot. So do you see my screen, the Copilot?
Yeah.
Now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My daughter and I are going to go to London in August. And I started by saying, what should I do? What should my daughter and I do while in London in August? And it gives me a list of things. Well, that's not really very helpful. I could get that off Google. I have no big benefit from that, right? So what you want to do is think about it more like you have to give context. So I said, my adult daughter and I are going to London, arriving on August 14th and departing on August 20th. Now, see, it's an adult daughter. We want to have high tea at the Savoy. On the 19th, we'll go see Taylor Swift in the evening. We enjoy experiencing culture and food, plays, art, museum, and sightseeing. What schedule would you recommend? So I'm asking it for ideas. And now I have an itinerary. Now, it forgot about the 17th and 18th. So what shall I do on August 17th and 18th? Well, so it comes back and has some more suggestions. All right. And we can begin to, I found that if I talk to it more, I tell it where I'm staying, and for the first 4 days versus the last 2, it revises the itinerary to take the location into consideration. And I think actually, I shared this with my daughter, and she got really excited. And so it was a lot of fun. And you just keep talking to it and telling it, I don't really like this. What can we do differently? So that's one use that I think I'll be using a lot. I have this other one in which I want to encourage a 9-year-old girl to explore all of her interests, to dream about what she will become one day, and to work hard to make her dreams come true. She likes drawing, reading, and so forth. Please provide a short poem that would perhaps inspire her. And here I have a poem. Now, I may not like the poem. I might want to take parts of it and leave other parts. I might want to edit it completely. But it's a fun start. It's a fun place to start. I actually used it to help with this presentation. I am going to give a presentation on AI. I'll say generative AI. Let me say to some neighbors, please provide an outline. And I have that. It may not be what I want to do, but it at least gives a start. And then I can say, thank you. Please provide a write-up of challenges and considerations and ethical considerations. And I'll get a document. I can also ask it for an outline of the slides that are to be provided. Okay. Now this is more like an outline. Okay. Can you write it as an article? Please. And now I get the write-up, hopefully. It's still pretty scattered, but better. I can also tell it I want it to be less verbose. I want more explanation. And I continue this process until I am satisfied or I decide I can expand from here. So Mary, we're close to time and I'll stop here. I regret I didn't have more time to play with it. This is the free version of Microsoft Copilot. You just Google for it, download it. Mary, if you'll get me out of the share, and you can, and try it. The big thing is, don't use it like Google. Try to get it to help you generate ideas. And then from the ideas, go to writing and then speaking.
Well, thank you, Linda. That was a whirlwind tour of an area that I think we're all worried about. Do we have any questions? I'm looking in the chat. Judy Berman says to you, funny that you say thank you. Does politeness register?
I can do it without saying thank you or I like this or things like that, but the feedback does seem to help. And every time someone has demonstrated it, and I've seen them demonstrate it, they've always been polite, and thank you or excellent is always a common response.
Ah, that's interesting. Any hands that we've got? We've got a minute or two. Mary, I don't see hands. Oh, Connie Citro has her hand up. Yeah, Connie.
Yeah, well,
Connie.
I'm a professional colleague of Linda's, and I've been at the Committee on National Statistics, and I've been to a number of the webinars that she's organized, which are really, really interesting. And what she was giving you there at the end to sort of help you play around, that's in the fun and games, aspect of it, which I think is great. But in the sort of how would we use this to really do things like diagnoses for medical conditions or generating, high quality statistics on, how many acres are in corn and so on and so on. I guess my own personal view is that there will be very specialized AI applications in specific industries, that get trained really well on that. But I don't think I see it taking over the world. It might destroy the world, but I don't think it taking over everybody's jobs because it's well, I've just discovered myself when I do use Microsoft Bing and the Copilot and the Bing chat comes up, whether you ask for it or not, over on the right side. So I'll be looking for something as a search and it'll start spitting out things for me. And it's gotten me faster to some references, but summarizing material with which I'm very familiar in federal statistics, it's wrong as often as it is right in terms of picking out, what's the really important thing or getting the nuance of the issue. And of course, these things are under development, but I've also read they're kind of running out of enough training data because essentially it's a probabilistic prediction. It's not a human mind, it's a okay, what is all the data in the world out there on the internet tell you is the most likely thing to come up next? And it's quite uncanny, but it is also definitely used with caution for other than having fun, and so.
Right. Well, it is really important because it does not assure it's right. If you ask it for references, often some of the references are not true, don't exist. You can write the author and the author won't be there.
Mhm.
But it is a good way to get started with ideas. And you have to use your own mind to be sure that what you're reporting from it is accurate. You're exactly right, Connie.
Well, thank you, Connie, for that comment. Thank you, Linda, for all of this past hour, which was fascinating. And to everybody here tonight, join us on the 3rd of June when we'll talk about a green city and what it means to live in one and are we living in one now? So good night, everyone.
Thank you.